Welcome to our 8th monthly Hedera Town Hall. We are so glad to have you guys, and it is, as Leemon said, great to always have such wonderful representation and hear from people from all over the world. It helps us, I know personally, feel a little bit more connected with our community during this time when we can't actually see your smiling faces in person. So we've got a lot to get through today. I will go ahead and jump in. Mance, this first question is on Hedera's vision. Hedera has been looking at enterprise use cases to reach users and have better adoption. However, I'm not sure what's stopping the adoption of a hybrid approach to reach out to community users directly via DeFi or DEX and other projects. Ultimately, DLT should be for the people, not just from the technology perspective, but by the very definition of the word, distributed.
Yeah, well, look, thank you for the question to kick things off here. So I agree with the principle outlined here, and I would refine it in the following way. When we choose what to develop for the platform, we're choosing features that can be used to enable a large range of products, not just a single product typically. I mean, we are a platform in that sense. It's meant to be horizontal to be able to support lots of different use cases. While we don't intend to directly develop products in any specific vertical, we understand that the community will develop products in many verticals, including DeFi. And I do have firsthand knowledge of multiple projects in the market that are doing exactly that. So I think it's fair to say that they will be making announcements as those projects mature. But as an organization, what we're not focused on is a single vertical, but enabling the community at large to do the kinds of things that they want to do, including the ones that you've just raised in this question. So stay tuned.
All right. Thanks, Mance. The next one I think is top of a lot of people's minds, Leemon, so we wanted to address it up early on in the call. Would it have been possible to have the US presidential election voting on a distributed ledger? Or are there still a lot of cons to using DLT for voting? Looking at some of the things online, it seems like we're still a long ways away from having trusted and impartial voting on a distributed ledger.
Oh, you're right. So there are ways that ledgers could be used in the voting process, and eventually it could be used in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of things we have to do first. So we're not ready as a society to be doing this. And here's just some of the things to think about in the complexity of the security here. You can imagine that maybe each local precinct stores a hash of their votes on the network just so that they can't later change it without saying it. You could use something like that right today, but it doesn't bring a whole lot of value, but it has some value for auditing to prevent you from telling two different people two different answers or changing your answers after the fact. You could do that today. But what you're really thinking about is, having our whole voting system. I just push a button on my phone and I vote, and it's on a ledger and it's unchangeable and we can trust it, right? There's a lot of problems with that. There was even a publication from MIT I saw recently explaining a lot of the different problems, but there's a huge number of problems with that. And we'll get there, but not today. So to do something like that, here's just some of the issues you have to worry about. We need a good identity system, which at a bare minimum in the United States would mean that you need to have the driver's license being issued by the government on a ledger. You need to have the social security card being issued on a ledger. You need to make sure, the important thing is that if you move out of a state, you get removed from the voter rolls from that state. Or if you leave the country or are deceased or any of the different ways you could leave the system, you have to make sure that that gets updated in the identity system. So it can't just be an identity system for a piece of the country. You'd have to have absolutely everyone in the country in an electronic identity system that is updated and guaranteed. And you'd want that to be on the ledger, or the ledger be able to read that and know that it's getting the truth. So just even before we can start, you have to do that. Then you have to make sure that voter registration is secure. Then you have to make sure that the software is secure. And this bothers me right now in places that use electronic voting machines, which is pretty common. What if there's a bug in the software? Lots of hackers have hacked into such machines. Now, at the moment, I'm not aware of any particular bugs in the machines that are in use, but there have been concerns. A lot of these machines will spit out a receipt, a paper receipt, and that we can later count those. That's a good idea. What you want is maybe it prints 2 receipts, and one goes to the user and one goes to a bucket that holds them that we can count if we need to, or something. There's lots of, yeah, but you have to print them at the same time. If the printer prints one and then prints the other, you could hack it so it prints different things. So you'd want to use carbon paper or carbonless paper to do them both at once. So you'd want to do something like that. And then there's the question of, well, how do you actually know that your vote was counted correctly but maintain privacy? So people like Chom have invented all sorts of cool math to do this, where they give you a receipt at the election that looks funny, and you can later check online and it shows you something on the screen that looks funny on your computer screen, but then you take this clear plastic with black squares that was your receipt and you put it over the screen and you can see how you voted and see if it was recorded correctly. There's lots of really crazy things like that you can do. And then you have the problem of bugs in the software. If you're going to vote from your phone, that's really far away. At a bare minimum, you need to have the program have a math proof that it is correct that can be checked by a computer, proof carrying code. It needs to go into a secure chip in your phone, not your normal phone chip. And that secure chip in the phone has to be able to show you who you can vote for and let you vote on a separate screen, maybe on the back of the phone, that has an OK button that's just connected to that special chip. It has its own special operating system, and the main phone only connects through a serial connection that's very carefully locked down. That whole architecture can be done, but nobody's doing that yet. And that's something we're going to need for real, true security. And then you still have the problem of, what if somebody is watching you vote and paying you while you're voting to vote for somebody? Or maybe they pay you to give them your phone and then they can vote on election day for you. How do you stop that? I don't know. That's actually a really hard problem. So voting is a very complex thing. Auditing we can do today, and maybe there's some value to that. But our current system is pretty secure, and you don't want to go to a system that's worse. And occasionally one precinct will make a mistake, and that affects a few votes. But if we go to a system where everyone in the country is running one piece of software and you make a mistake in that software, then it affects everyone in the country, and that's not as good. So we want to be very careful. We have a good system. We don't want to make it worse, and we have to go very step by step. But we'll do that eventually.
All right, thank you, Leemon. Mance, has anyone used the Hedera Token Service yet, and are any interested parties considering it?
Right. So the short answer is yes. We are building the Hedera Token Service in response to market demand. So most of this year has been spent determining which use cases are the most important to the market. We started off with a dozen, and we've narrowed it down to a couple. Tokenization, generally speaking, including the HTS, as well as data integrity. We did that in part by looking at how the network was being used, and also by just listening to the customers that we were talking to. So it became clear at the beginning of the summer that there was a large pent-up demand for tokenization services on Hedera generally, and that takes 2 forms. There's the ability to create a fully customized token of any flavor you can imagine using HCS and an appnet. The appnet, of course, would be holding the ledger itself, and HCS would do put the transactions into consensus order. And then in addition to that, what you all have seen on the preview net and is coming is HTS, Hedera Tokenization Service, that makes it possible for users to very quickly spin up an ERC20-like token. You know, it's not an ERC20, it's our own specification, but it's very quick and easy with less customization opportunity that as you would have if you were using HCS. So we have customers in various stages of development and interest for both of those. So again, the simple answer is yes.
All right, thanks for the update, Mance. Leemon, we have a question here from a web developer / e-commerce store creator. How can I utilize Hedera? There was once a WordPress plugin. Any updates?
Yeah, so we do a lot of these demo things and release the source code so that you can build it. So feel free, build such a thing. That's really cool. You can use our WordPress plugin that we wrote as an example a long time ago. Use that code. It's not a product. It's not something that we're we're developing and making changes to it and so on. It was a demo that we wrote and we released. And so go ahead and use the source code, download it and use it and modify it and fix it and whatever. And we do a lot of these. And we would encourage you to go ahead and play with them, build something. If you want to, build something and give it away open source. If you want to, get a bunch of people and build a whole project around it or build a company around it. And that'd be cool. And I know some people have done that with e-commerce and paying to see things on web pages. And if you want to do that too, that'd be very cool.
All right. Mance, the next one is for you. Are you planning to provide financial support for startups who are building on Hedera besides the technical support provided by the Boost program?
Right. So another great question. And this is one I've been looking forward to answering. So Leemon and I are both directly working on a program that is designed to incentivize the growth of the Hedera ecosystem generally. So rather than exclusively focusing on transactions per second, we're going to incentivize the creation of active accounts, what we're calling active accounts, meaning accounts that have a non-trivial balance of HBAR in them over a period of time, as well as the creation of a large, let's stick with active accounts. So if we create a large population of active accounts, then that base of active accounts represents a market for any dApps or applications that would potentially build on top of the Hedera platform. So we're going to incentivize specifically the creation of active accounts. In addition, the flip side of that coin is that we're going to incentivize applications to provide HBAR holders something to do with their HBAR outside of making API calls on the network itself. So we are focused on transactions per second, the creation of active accounts, as well as incentivizing applications to provide HBAR holders to do something with the HBAR outside of merely making API calls on the platform. In other words, we're building a program that will incentivize the growth of a decentralized economic ecosystem. That's the goal here, right? So this is different than simply paying a large staking reward that would incentivize people to lock up their tokens until the rewards end. That's not what we're talking about here. On the contrary, we're focused on providing incentives that lead to a sustained, lasting ecosystem. That's the goal. We're now working with our first few grant recipients on the details of this, and we will be providing more information as the program matures.
That reminds me. You mentioned we're incentivizing people who will drive TPS, who will create active accounts, real accounts with different people owning them, and will give you things to do with HBAR on the network. I love those three. We don't care about fake accounts or empty accounts or 1 million accounts owned by one person. And it reminds me of what happened this weekend. Did you guys see that? It was kind of funny. It's sad, but there was somebody who set up a website to create free accounts for you. He would pay for it. The guy set up the website, would pay for you to create an account. And it's a great thing. He was being generous. And whenever someone's generous, other people tend to want to take advantage of it. And I hate that. And so somebody wrote a bot that created lots and lots of accounts, and he ended up losing a couple $100 before he turned it off, which was sad. It doesn't hurt the network, it doesn't affect us, but it's just sad to see that happen to somebody. And I was just thinking, what's the moral of the story? Is it that you should never be generous? No, being generous is a good thing. What I would say is that if you want to be generous, be generous. That's a good thing. But when you write your software, put a cap that you'll only be generous so many times per day. And that way, if someone tries to take advantage of you, you'll know it, and they just don't take advantage of you very much. So that was unfortunate. And that happened over the weekend. You may have noticed a whole bunch of accounts got created. And then on Monday, more accounts were being created, but this was by a legitimate person. So I think it may even still be going on right now, but they're just creating lots of accounts, and that's also a legitimate person. And so we don't mind either of those two, but they don't particularly help us either. And so we're not incentivizing those. If we want to incentivize accounts, it'll be real accounts where every account is owned by a separate person and has a lot of HBARs in it. Then they become potential customers for other companies to come into the ecosystem, and it builds the ecosystem. We want to reward that. But these current things are just creating a whole bunch of accounts. Doesn't hurt us, but it doesn't help us, so we're not going to reward that.
All right, thank you both. Leemon, Hedera is a public network, so it's accessible to anyone. When sharding is available, is it possible for a specific shard on the network to be permissioned and private and communicate with public shards only as necessary?
Absolutely. And it's not shards, it's appnets. Shards, almost by definition, are all the same and they're public and they can't be private. But appnets are private. It's exactly what you're describing. You can do that today. And we have software to help you do that. And we have a bunch of blogs and things telling you about how to do that. You can set up your own permissioned private network. Everything is encrypted. Only people can come to it who you invite. You can, or you can do KYC, or you can have gatekeeping, or you can charge people to join your game, or whatever you want to do. You can make it as private as you want. And then what you do is you encrypt all your messages and you send them through Hedera. And so basically all the transactions on your private network go through Hedera. And so you have all the trust of Hedera in what order they're put in and what timestamps you put on them, but you can encrypt them so you have total privacy. And then within your little closed ecosystem, you do whatever you want. That's a beautiful thing that you can do with HCS. And so yes, we do exactly what you're describing today. It's not called shards, it's called appnets. It's the Hedera Consensus Service.
Great, thanks for clarifying that, Leemon. Mance, can you tell us more about the monthly payments that Hedera makes to Swirlds?
Yeah, sure. So look, first off, we pride ourselves on being as transparent as possible. We have given full disclosures on the relationship between Swirlds and Hedera. Rather than spending this time going through all of that, what we're going to do here is post a link to a blog that has all of that information. Zenobia, are you posting it or should I?
If you can, I, for some reason, don't have access to the chat right now.
Okay, so I will post that link while Leemon answers the next question. But happy to disclose that we have disclosed all of it. It's out there. I'm going to give you a link. You can go take a look.
All right. Thanks, Mance. Leemon, more interest in appnets. So what implications would a CBDC based on a private permissioned appnet run by centralized servers of central banks have on the promises of Hedera being open and secure for any participants? And then I'll go ahead and keep asking the rest of this question, but I can repeat it if you need afterwards. Could central instances of such appnets block certain accounts from transacting on their appnet? Could governments force Hedera to block certain topics and thereby prevent unwanted appnets from using HCS on the mainnet? How open and free can Hedera be when it comes to private permissioned appnets?
Ah, great question. And it's really the same answer as the previous one. If you want to set up a private permissioned appnet, or if a government wants to set up a private permissioned appnet, then you can control whatever it does. You can filter it out. You can, if you want to stop people from using it or shut down accounts or spy on people or steal or whatever you want to do, you set up the rules. It's entirely up to you how you set up your appnet. As for Hedera, we're just a carrier. We're just like a telephone system. You send us transactions and we send them back to you in order. We're not going to block the topic. We're not going to shut down your ability to feed a stream of transactions through us. And if you encrypt them, we can't even read your transactions. We can't even spy on you. All we do is put them in order for you. And so we have not written the software to allow us to delete a topic or freeze a topic or filter a topic. A topic doesn't store any information. It's just a conduit. It's just a pipe. And we provide the pipes. And if you want to create a totally open appnet, you can do that. If you want to have one that's all closed and controlled, you can do that. You can do whatever you want. You're building on top of us. But we are simply open. That's what we are.
All right. Thanks, Leemon. Mance, question on the governing council. What are the chances of a mass exit of governing council members, just like what happened with Libra? Are there any measures to curb such instances?
Well, so I think that the chance of a mass exodus is very low. First, we've taken a very conservative regulatory approach from the beginning. We understand that our council members care about being circumspect as it relates to the regulatory environment, and they're not interested in participating in an organization that would put their interests at risk. So we don't. And the choices that we make minimize the risk on behalf of our members. That's the way we've done it from the very beginning. Second, the interests of our council members are aligned. Our members are a mix of those that provide cloud infrastructure, consulting and professional services, and those that have specific use cases that they'd like to build and deploy. So the choice of council members was designed from the beginning to be synergistic. So we just don't have the motivations for council members to depart in a way where a bunch of them would be doing so at once.
Great, thank you, Mance. Okay, Leemon, let's talk a little bit about security. Given that security of the network in part depends on a high price for HBAR, and without going into details that would-be malicious actors could use, what can you say to network users about measures that Hedera has in place to protect against attacks on the price of HBAR?
Oh, so to begin with, we're totally safe right now because we don't have anonymous nodes. So there's no fear that there'll be a Sybil attack where someone creates lots of anonymous nodes and uses all those HBARs to hurt us, because there are no anonymous nodes right now. And we may do that someday. And we'll only do it if we're convinced that the HBARs are spread out widely enough and that you don't have all of them owned by one person. So that's exactly the thing that we will be looking at. And we will not go to anonymous nodes until we're sure it's secure. But right now, we don't have anonymous nodes, and so it's not an issue. Also, we have released less than a third of the HBARs. And as long as less than a third have been released, it's impossible for an attacker to get a third of the HBARs. So the problem you're describing is a real issue that we're concerned about in the future. And we will not take a step that is dangerous unless we are convinced that this isn't a problem. But that's in the future. For right now, we're safe two different ways, regardless, even if all the released HBARs are held by one person, it wouldn't hurt us.
All right, thanks, Leemon. Okay, Mance, another one on the governing council for you. Are all the governing council members actively building use cases of their own? Does Hedera have enough manpower to support the development and training activities of these governing council members?
So different council members do different things. They have different motivations for being on the council. So I would not say that every single council member is building an application. No, I don't believe that's the case. But a number of them are. You're right in the assumption that it's not possible for Hedera to have enough manpower to support everything that's going on. So we have to do two things. We prioritize the high touch accounts, that's what we would call them, the accounts that we're working with directly and directly supporting with our own resources. We prioritize them based on TPS, active account creation, and what we're calling sort of value creation, the opportunity to realize additional things for HBAR holders to do with their HBARs. We prioritize those. And then there are a large number of other opportunities that we don't personally support or touch. We do that through system integrators. And the list of system integrators that are supporting Hedera with their resources and their service is growing. Wipro, for example, is a council member that falls into that category. So Wipro does provide consulting services for Hedera projects, as an example. But it's not restricted to just council members that are consultancies that provide those services. There's a whole channel of system integrators, both large and small, that is being developed that are building practices around the support of Hedera projects. That's how we scale. We're not going to be a big company. We're never going to be a large organization in terms of people. We're scaling the efforts through the creation of a channel through the system integrators.
All right, thanks, Mance. The next one is related to some Coupon Bureau announcements that we made today. I'd like to say hello also to our partners at the Coupon Bureau who are on the call today. So this made me chuckle a little bit because on the one hand, we got one question that said, Hedera seems to be recycling its news about end users. Why is that? And then we got another question that said, it was said that Coupon Bureau will be launching later this summer and it's already winter. When Coupon Bureau? So wanted to tackle this. Yes, we have now made 2 announcements with Coupon Bureau, the initial announcement, and then you can also go on our website, and I believe it was last month, we made an announcement of them taking the next step in terms of rolling out the new standard. And then earlier last week, the Coupon Bureau actually on their social site shared some of the great progress that they're making and some of the pilots that are going on in a limited capacity with some retailers trying out the new coupon standard actually in some physical stores. So progress is definitely being made. Those guys are doing a great job. They are engaged with a number of the retailers. We would encourage you to also look on their sites to share who those folks are. They are well-recognized household names that we are very excited that they are working with. On the flip side, the reason that you will hear us talk about some of these projects over and over again and share some of the milestones is that for large corporations, for people building meaningful pieces of software, this does not happen overnight. And the deployment of these things takes time, and it takes a lot of education of a number of different parties that are involved. So the bigger the project, many times the longer it takes and the more phases that there are. So I would give Coupon Bureau kudos for really laying out those phases. If you have interest in reading, the details on how that is going to be rolled out, they do have a white paper on their website as well. But we've always said we are an enterprise grade public ledger. And so as a result, you are not going to see, you're going to see things that take meaningful projects that take time to build and then have meaningful milestones as they deploy and get used out by a large number of people. So we will keep beating that drum. We want to share those updates. We are always excited to see that progress from our end users, and we want the community to know that too. All right. Mance, next one is on HBAR. In previous town halls, you have explained that HBAR is not a security, but is a utility token. What is the benefit to that as to why Hedera has chosen HBAR to be a utility token?
Yeah, so let me first start by just sort of correcting a misperception. Hedera didn't choose whether it's a security or not. We don't have the authority to choose whether it's one or the other. What our view is that based on the facts and circumstances, the sale of HBARs and transactions in HBARs should not be subject to US securities laws. Meaning it's not a security, or it's our belief it's not a security. We structured it to not be a security. We believe that we have a strong basis for that position, but ultimately it's going to be a legal determination on the part of the regulators. That's not true just for us. It's true for every platform in the market. And it doesn't really matter what our view is. It's the view of the regulators that count. Now, if it's a security, then there are a whole set of laws that apply to it that would have an impact on its use in the way that the platform has been designed to use, HBARs. But we're confident in our view. We've been in discussion with the regulators for years now, at least a couple of years, maybe longer. And so those are the implications, and that's a little bit of clarification on our position. In addition, there is a blog. I'm going to share this blog with the community here as well that can go in, or does go in more depth, and will give you more information on that.
All right. Thanks, Mance. Our next question comes from someone with a very long-term view, Leemon. You have said you plan on being a 100-year company. Why would you limit Hedera to 100 years?
I love the way you think. No, what we always meant is at least 100 years. What we're saying is we want this company to be something real that provides a utility to the planet forever, indefinitely. At least 100 years is the way we're saying that, as opposed to just make a quick buck, do a pump and dump and have it go away in a year. We want to last generations. We want it to last throughout history. This is the goal, is to build something real that will be providing a real benefit to humanity forever. This is the goal. Yes, I would never limit it to a mere 100 years. That would be terrible.
All right, good. Okay, Mance, something a little bit more specific and of our time. In the latest council minutes, it was noted that a council member expressed his views on recent lawsuits, enforcement actions, fundraising strategies, and overall activities in the DLT space, and how Hedera's conservative regulatory stance and restrictions on certain activities may be hampering its position in the market. Can you elaborate a bit more as to what specifically he was referring to?
Yeah, so thank you again for the question. I want to add some clarity to this. The member, when commenting on recent lawsuits, enforcement actions, fundraising strategies, and overall activities, those were not referring to anything related to Hedera. The member was talking about in the industry, in the distributed ledger industry, there have been enforcement actions, fundraising, various fundraising strategies, overall activities, et cetera. So it's not the case that they were talking specifically about something that we have done in the context of this sentence here. However, they did raise the question of whether Hedera is being too conservative in our regulatory stance and our restrictions on certain activities. We're pretty conservative in what we will and will not do. One of the features and challenges of decentralized governance is that we have numerous members with different risk profiles, different perspectives that operate in different jurisdictions. So it's not the case that that they all have the same opinions and same views on anything, right? Just about any decision that has to be made that's consequential. There's a lot of debate that goes on. I view that as a very healthy thing. So I would say that it's an ongoing discussion. It's an ongoing conversation about how to balance business needs against a whole variety of risks, market risks, regulatory risks, et cetera. And it is a conversation that's worth revisiting regularly, and we do so. So, it came up again in the last council meeting. It will probably come up in most council meetings as we continue to monitor the environment, including the regulatory environment, and we make decisions that affect all the council members and Hedera as a whole.
All right, thank you, Mance. Leemon, how can we as the community help spread the word about Hedera?
Oh yeah. So you can tell your friends, you can tell other people, you can give people links to it or whatever. You can have meetups and things, but you can also build things on us. And if you start to build projects in this ecosystem, you can interact with other people in the ecosystem, build projects. You can build an open source thing and release it, or you could get with a group of people and build something bigger, maybe open source and release it or not, or you could build a whole company that is in this ecosystem. And we are talking to lots of little startup companies that are just, a person in their garage or several people in a garage, and it's exciting. And so do that. And if you aren't interested in any of those things, then just tell people about us and give them links to our various videos and blogs and podcasts and all that stuff. This very video. But I really appreciate all of the interest that we have. We have a huge number of people that are telling about it and evangelizing about it and building on it and playing as part of this ecosystem. And so I just want to say thank you to all of you doing that.
All right, great. Mance, can Hedera reach out to Pfizer or any of the other, vaccine makers in any way to assist with the vital task of rolling out their vaccine? Or is anyone who's closely partnered with Hedera, such as Acor, willing and able to add value to the effort to get as many people vaccinated as soon as possible?
Yeah. Well, look, I'm proud to say that Safe Health Systems / Acor are working with premium partners to directly address the needs created by COVID. In addition, there are industry working groups being formed that not only address the immediate needs of tracking the status of COVID vaccinations, but their goal is to modernize the entire global system for tracking immunizations generally. I've personally had the opportunity to participate in the kickoff of some of those discussions, and I consider it a privilege for Safe Health and Hedera to be able to contribute to those efforts. So the answer is yes, and we are, and more will be coming out in the future about those efforts.
Great, thank you, Mance. Okay, I'm going to take the next one as it relates to marketing. Does it deviate from Hedera's marketing strategy and approach if you appoint a few social media influencers on Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, etc. for digital marketing? They could always put a disclaimer on it that it is paid marketing or advertising, or is it against SEC regulations? So I think we have a few different things here. One is just the regulatory environment. And, as Mance talked about, our consistent desire to be conservative and to make sure that we don't run afoul of some of the things that we've seen other projects get into trouble for. So we are always aware of that. And the other is just the value of some of those things. So we have seen some of those, different marketing approaches are effective for doing different things. We have seen some of that paid marketing and advertising sometimes deliver a sugar high that's not really sustainable and doesn't actually drive users and traffic and the kinds of things that we're looking for as we look to grow the network. So, again, as Mance pointed to, we always continue to evaluate our programs and the kinds of things that we are doing. But we want to make sure that they are effective and that they provide some meaningful value. And we are not, unlike my kids at Halloween, we are not looking for that sugar high. Okay, Leemon, the next one's kind of a fun one. When you were building the business plan, what other names did you consider besides Hedera?
Yeah, we wanted a name that started with H. So we looked at common English words and found that they're already in widespread use, even within the blockchain world. So DLTs, we're already using all the common English names, English words that start with H. We looked at weird names and made up names, but they're hard to spell and they sound strange and they have bad connotations and it doesn't work well. And then Natalie, I think, suggested, hey, why don't you use Hedera? It's technically an English word. It comes from the Latin. It's used in the name of ivy. It sounds nice. It starts with H. It's easy to spell. And so when we heard her suggest that, I think there was a very rapid agreement that this is the way we are Hedera. And it's worked out well.
All right, we're moving into some fun ones here. I'm going to pose this to both of you, Mance and Leemon. If you could live your lives a second time, not that you're not fully living your lives right now, what passion or field would you pursue outside of DLT?
Leemon, you'll get up first.
Sure. So in an alternate universe, what would I have ended up doing and enjoying? Almost anything. I think I very much have enjoyed computer science and the DLT stuff I'm doing. If I was going to stay in computer science, I might do things in AI and in graphics and in robotics and in jam-resistant communication. I've all done all those things. If I wasn't going to be in computer science, I think I would enjoy any of the sciences, physics. I think I would enjoy pure math, just even abstract math that doesn't have useful applications. I think that I would enjoy any of the sciences. I'd probably enjoy any of the engineerings. I would very much enjoy being an artist. I think I would enjoy being a writer, fiction writer, probably science fiction. But I think I would enjoy doing all of those things. I could absolutely imagine a whole life enjoying those things. And I think that that, it's fun to do things and be passionate about what you're doing. And so given almost anything, I think I could become passionate about it and enjoy it.
Yeah. So, I mean, what Leemon is describing is the same for me. It's not that there's one particular discipline that is necessarily more or less interesting. I mean, of course, I have some interest in Leemon, and I have been working on those for decades now. But what's important from my perspective is checking boxes for me personally. I like to make progress no matter what it is that I'm working on. If I can see progress being made, and it's sort of a competition. It's not always a market competition. It's often just, it's a personal competition. Whatever it is that I'm working on, if I can make progress against it and see that, that I'm building something from nothing, then it's satisfying in a certain way. So I think it has a lot to do with personality versus, market interests or discipline.
Speaking of that, just curious, what's the map behind you?
Yeah, so a lot of people ask that question, believe it or not. That is Paris. That's a map, a 19th century map of Paris. And it's real, it's accurate. Our chief product officer, Lionel Chacron, was here about a year ago in my house. He's French, he's from Paris. He took a look. Looks the same today, not surprisingly. Things don't change. Streets don't change in downtown Paris, but that's what it is. It's a big old map of Paris.
All right. Leemon, what is your preferred news source and what information resources do you enjoy?
Oh, so I try to read news from a variety of places. So I have subscriptions to The Economist and to Wall Street Journal. I use Apple's news app to give me lots of different sources, and I try to read both conservative and liberal so that I get kind of balance. Maybe they're both equally bad, but I at least try to read equally bad sources of information. And so I don't spend a lot of time reading news, but I do read those sources. I probably spend more time reading math and physics and computer science kinds of things. Quanta magazine is online and it's free and it's really cool. I like phys.org, phys.org. I am a member of the ACM and the IEEE. So communications to the ACM and IEEE Spectrum are cool. They have lots of really cool things in those in computer science and electrical engineering. And then I just, follow links various ways and see various things that are going on. Friends send me links to various things going on in the worlds of technology and so on. So fun stuff.
All right, guys. So some light reading for our community here. And you can quiz Leemon on the latest issues of some of those next time. Leemon, one more here. There are not many people I know who would be able to hold a conversation with Leemon about many topics. If Leemon could discuss or work on only one topic with, and I'm going to assume this is Elon Musk instead of Elon Musk, unless there is a scientist that you know also named Elon Musk, what would it be?
I have a huge amount of respect for Elon. I think he's done some very cool things, both in building his companies and in being visionary. I don't agree with everything he says, but I think a lot of what he does is really revolutionary. And have you looked at Starlink? The numbers on that blow my mind. Have you looked at the numbers that it costs to orbit for his SpaceX stuff? It's amazing. Everyone says the Tesla is great. I drive a beat up decade-old car, but if I were to buy a new car, I'd probably get a Tesla. It's beautiful. If I could talk to him, I would be most interested, if he wants to talk about the projects he's currently involved in, I'd be most interested in talking about how to use self-replicating robots to colonize Mars. I think that it is necessary and sufficient. If we can build an ecosystem of robots that can mine and manufacture and assemble and transport and repair, if you can build an ecosystem of that where they are self-creating, then it's inevitable we'll colonize Mars. It's almost trivial. Surely somebody will send a seed, and then 10 years later, we'll move into the gigantic cities sprawling across the entire planet underneath the ground, but huge cities and farms and parks and everything. If he were willing to talk about something he's not currently involved in, I would talk about self-replicating robots that are tiny. I would talk about nanotech. I think the number one thing that needs to be done to move this field forward, which is not moving forward fast, it's really slow. There was something recently on self-assembling DNA being scaled up to larger things, which is very cool. People have built artificial ribosomes that are very cool, but mostly it's moving at a snail's pace because there's no funding for it. The number one thing is that we should be incentivizing the creation of an in silico replicator, by which I mean build a model in a computer of where all the atoms are and simulate it and have this machine in the computer self-replicate. And there's lots of literature on how you would go about doing that. It's a hard problem, but I think that if someone did that, it would be a proof of concept that you could build such a thing in the real world, and lots of funding would happen and lots of researchers would move that way, and we'd have it soon. And then everything becomes better. Computers become better. Colonizing Mars becomes better. Almost anything you can imagine. Energy production becomes better. Everything becomes better if you can build a self-replicator. But that's what I would incentivize. So if I would talk to him about one new thing to do, I'd say little self-replicating robots. And if I would talk about something he's currently doing, I would say big self-replicating robots.
All right, Leemon, I'm going to jump around a little bit only because you mentioned Mars and what are the chances that we have another question about Mars. What kind of community would you envision living on if you were to retire to Mars? What would your neighbors be like? What would your house look like? What would you do in your free time?
Yes, so I don't know if I'm going to retire on Mars, but if we end up with the self-replicating robots, it means you do not live in a tin can on the surface that you drag there from Earth. What it means is that there would be enormous underground cities. I've been in the world's largest mall in Dubai, at least it was largest when I was there. It is beautiful. There's no windows. It could be built underground on Mars and you wouldn't even know there's anything different. You don't feel claustrophobic. It's very open. Actually, all malls are like that. There's usually no windows, and it could be built underground on Mars and you wouldn't even know the difference. You could have apartment buildings built underground. And many apartment buildings have courtyards, like a square that has all the windows facing in. You could do the same thing. The only difference is that the square, that courtyard would have a ceiling above all the windows, and that ceiling would have lights on it and maybe even a fake sky. And that would be your underground apartment complex on Mars, and it could be beautiful. And I also have some ideas. I think you really want your apartment to be between two parallel hallways, so there's a way of escape if one hallway has problems. But maybe you crawl down into the courtyard, or maybe you have fake windows on your walls that are video screens. There's other ways of doing it. But if people want real trees down in a real courtyard, you could do that too. Giant parks, all of that. I actually have a design I did once of how you could build a city for 100,000 people that you could get from any room in any house to any room in any other house in 20 minutes of walking. That was fun. I'd love to build that on Mars. So when we get the robots, we can do that. All sorts of interesting things.
All right. And as we get closer to the top of the hour, we have one last fun question. What are Zenobia, Leemon, and Mance's favorite horror movies? And I will start by answering. I watched one horror movie when I was probably far too young to watch it, which was Carrie. And I have never watched another one since. So I will hand it over to you two.
This was a good one for last month. In fact, you all should know that we had it on the list for last month and we ran out of time and didn't get to it. So I wouldn't say that I have a favorite horror movie per se, but I am a big Tim Burton fan. So it's sort of gothic horror. All right. I love his work. Always have. It's just what very interesting personality. And it really comes through in his movies. And so that would be my answer. I like Tim Burton movies.
So I usually find horror movies boring. They're very predictable and the characters aren't acting like real people would. And it just bothers me. There've been some that I've enjoyed. I like the Blair Witch Project. I like The Ring. The Ring came after Sixth Sense, if you recall, and the ending was kind of surprising from that point of view, which was fun. Blair Witch Project, I liked it because it made me feel like I was in the woods, and I really like the woods. But I definitely loved Cabin in the Woods. And I don't know if that's horror, or if it's a spoof of horror, or if it's a deconstruction of horror. I'm not even sure what genre is. I think the genre is Joss Whedon. Anything he writes is fantastic. So I really like that one. So I'll go with that for my answer, even if it's maybe not her. I don't know what it is. It's just Joss Whedon.
All right. Thank you both. A couple of housekeeping items as we wrap this up. So we will not do one of these in December. We know it's a busy month personally for a lot of folks. People are trying to take some time off, decompress in ways that are safe and socially distanced. We will see you all back in January. Just as a reminder, we do send out the form to ask questions a few weeks ahead of time. And that allows us to make sure that, we can go through things that, things that have already been asked or are available on the website. We would just refer you back to that. There is a very robust FAQ on the website, and so a lot of things can be addressed there. Again, things that are sort of forward-looking statements or predictions that we don't have any control of, we don't comment on here. So this forum is really designed for insights for our community, a number of whom have been with us a long time and know a lot about the project, to get their questions addressed that can't necessarily be easily found on our website or through some of the other resources. And then for those of you who are not on right at the beginning of the session, Mance, I might put you on the spot again for just a minute to talk about the folks from Hala. That was an announcement that we made with them this morning in terms of their use of Hedera. And given everything that's going on in the world, that is a use case that I love hearing about.
Yeah, so happy to do so. Maybe we can post the link to the blog as well. I don't know if somebody can do that. I don't have it here in front of me. But Hala Systems has a really cool application. They are using HCS as a way of ensuring the integrity of media that's then in support of early warning systems in war zones in the Middle East. So specifically, they're working in Syria at the moment. They make it possible for those on the ground that have smartphones, for example, that are taking video, et cetera, to get that timestamped through HCS, record it in an immutable way, so that it's evidence of what was being done at the moment that the video was taken. And so go check it out. It's an honor for us to be involved in this. They're doing really good work. It's important work, and it's something that you all should see. Go look at the video.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate you. We wish you a safe and happy holidays wherever you are in the world, whatever you might be celebrating and however you might be celebrating it. And we look forward to chatting with you all in the new year. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.